After so many years of drought, what's the danger to our landscape and gardens of having an El Nino winter like we're having?
Well, first of all, our plants are pretty stressed because we've been in drought for 4 years, and so they are more susceptible to damage. With so much rain, our plants need oxygen, and when the roots are just totally covered in water, they can't breathe so much. So that can cause damage to your plants. There's not a whole lot, the water's there. We will talk about some of the things that you can do along the way. One of the things to be sure about is don't walk a lot on your garden beds because you're squeezing all the oxygen out of the garden and compacting our hard clays. And so it's best not to put a lot of pressure into your beds and on your gardens when it is so saturated. With the water being so saturated in our soils, we can also have damage of plants, trees blowing over. The roots are loose, the plants are damaged and stressed, and when we have high winds, that can cause a lot of damage.
So I know a lot of people gave up their lawns, especially this past year, and they probably did it the wrong way by just letting them die. And as a result, a lot of people now have pretty thick mud in front of their houses. Is there anything we can do at this point to cut down on the muck?
Absolutely. If in getting rid of your lawn, if you didn't already, for some people you may have just stopped watering, which is fine, and the lawn will have died. And if you didn't mulch, do sheet mulching at the time, or just some kind of mulching at the time, now is a great time to do that. In addition to the muck that we're having right now, you're having a lot of mushrooms, and weeds are starting to come up. So it's a perfect time to get out and mulch. If you're going to do that, a couple of different things. You can just take wood chips, or if you have a lot of leaf fall from sitting around from earlier in the year, you can use that, but you really want to put it on thick, 3 or 4 inches, to suppress the weeds. In addition to that, you can go ahead and sheet mulch at this time, which means you're going to put down a layer of cardboard or burlap and then pile 3 or 4 inches of mulch on top of that. That will do a beautiful job of suppressing the weeds fairly permanently. So that's one way to go about it. The other thing that may happen if you did sheet mulch, chances are you may still have weeds coming up on top of that. So you'll see here and there, because random seeds have blown in, and you're going to probably see some mushrooms coming up in there as well. The nice thing about it, if you did sheet mulch, you've got that layer of cardboard or burlap. Those weeds are going to come out really easily, and we'd encourage you to go ahead and pull them out now before they start forming seed heads. Even in spite of the fact that it's been cold and rainy, we're seeing weeds already beginning to set their seed heads, and they will very quickly set seed and send those flying all around. So we want to try and avoid those and get them out of the ground as soon as possible.
I know a couple of people who have said that they didn't want to do the sheet mulching or to put wood chips on because they felt with the rain they would just wash away and fill up the gutters. Is that likely to happen?
Well, I think that if you're if what you've got is a steep slope, it's possible that you could have runoff of your wood chips. If you've got a flat surface, no, those wood chips aren't going anywhere. You may have, on the edges near sidewalks, you might have a little bit that fall over, but in general, they're going to stay put really nicely. If you are trying to sheet mulch on a slope, you want to use burlap underneath, and that will really help hold the wood chips in place.
Great. And if we don't have a lawn, can we go ahead and plant, not sod, but plant other plants in there, or is it too muddy and mucky to do that?
It's pretty early to plant right now because our ground is so saturated. You don't really want to be working the soil when it is this wet. It causes the soil to compact and clump, and our clay soils don't really like that. We like to get it all light and fluffy. So you really want to wait to put in new plants. We're not too, we want to wait until the rain calms down and we have some good sunny days and the ground dries out pretty much. And then you can start going to the nursery and picking out your favorite plants and putting them in so you have a nice, pretty garden in the spring.
The other thing to remember is that we're still not past the danger of frost. We had a lot of really cold days, cold mornings through December and into January, and we could certainly have more of those. So another reason to hold off on planting younger, more tender plants until it warms up a little bit.
Great. So I know driving around neighborhoods, first I see this beautiful green swath, and I think, wow, somebody's got a beautiful lawn. And then I get close to it, and I realize it's weeds, and a lot of weeds, not just a few. Is there something that you can do with those now?
Well, again, we're back to the secret, the secret to lots of problems in the garden, and that's called mulch. And the way you're going to suppress weeds is you're either going to pull them out or you're going to have to cover them up. And so, if you take a weed whacker and you go out and cut them, most of them are going to come back. And a lot of weeds that are going to be lower, growing close to the ground, you can't get to them with a weed whacker. So those are ones that you really want to cover up. And some of those low-growing, ground-covery weeds are very tenacious. And so with those, sheet mulching is important because they somehow seem to come back through layers of mulch fairly easily. So again, we're back to the secret of the garden mulch.
So you don't really recommend like wholesale Roundup or some other poisoning on the weeds?
Well, we try to avoid that.
The mulch will do it if you put it on thick enough, and then you don't have to use the poisons.
Great. Okay. So when water restrictions were imposed, we think we discovered this new world of drought-resistant or drought-tolerant plants and succulents. And now we've got all this rain. Is that going to hurt those plants?
It very likely could. Our drought-tolerant plants don't like a whole lot of water, and now we're just going to be deluged with all this rain, and there's not a lot of oxygen in the soil. There's not a lot you can do about it if they're going to succumb to the water, but just watch them. Usually with plants, I don't do, if it's totally dead, you can cut it back unless it's a frost-tolerant plant. If it's frost-tolerant, I wait until the spring growth comes out because the old dead growth will help to protect it. A lot of these plants, though, are dormant, and they could be dormant. So depending on what you're talking about, it might look dead to you right now, but it might actually spring to life in the spring. So don't just start pulling things out at this time of year. One way to tell if a portion of a branch is dead or alive, if it looks dead, is you can take like your clippers and scratch the bark of the stem just a little bit and see what's underneath there. If it's green, a nice pretty green color, then that branch is still alive. If it's totally looks dead, if it's brown, then that branch is dead. But that's a nice trick to try and see if a dormant plant is indeed dead or if it's still alive.
Sounds kind of like a good excuse to be lazy and stay out of your garden. Just let things go.
And that's
see
what I
happens.
do a lot of times in the winter is I don't spend that much time in my garden, and I wait till the spring to really get out there and check things out. The winter's kind of, the bears hibernate, and I kind of hibernate somewhat in my garden in the winter time.
Well, we've talked, I think, mostly about plants that are in the ground. What about your potted plants? Are there things you need to watch out for with them?
Well, with the potted plants, you just want to make sure if you have potted plants sitting around in a saucer, they could well be sitting in standing water right now. So you want to make sure that your pots are drained. Two things. If your pots are underneath an overhang, like they're on a porch or something like that, you probably need to water them. And so if they've been sitting there for the last couple of months and haven't gotten exposure to the rain, then they're going to need some water from you. But if they've been sitting out in the rain, it's really easy to drown them. What you should do with your pots is have them sitting up on bricks or stones or something so that water can drain through easily. You don't want them sitting directly on the ground or in a saucer. The hole can get plugged up and the water will come up and they'll drown, they'll suffocate.
And although El Nino usually means warmer winters, we've had some pretty cold overnight temperatures. So what are some of your ideas for keeping plants from getting frostbite?
Well, first of all, back to the potted plants. If you have potted plants that are frost sensitive, citrus plants, or I have a plumeria, things that don't normally grow in this area, and they're potted, you can, if they're small enough that you can pick them up, you can put them under a porch. You can put them next to the house, because next to the house you get heat radiating from inside the house through the walls. You might not realize that it is quite a bit warmer next to the house. So you can put your potted plants, nestle them right up there, or you can bring them inside if you have a place indoors that you can put them, and that will keep them protected. If they are too large of a pot or they're planted in the ground, that's not going to be a really good viable option for you. So what we use out at our garden, we have citrus trees and we have avocado tree out there, and they're very frost sensitive, and we cover them with a fabric-like material called Agribon. And we use the heaviest duty one, it's Agribon 70, but there are lighter weight ones too. And this material breathes. With a lot of covers, if you use plastic or blankets, with plastic, if you put it on the plant, if it touches the leaves, it will burn them from the cold, because the cold goes right through the plastic. With blankets, they're dark, and so you have to take them off every day with plastic and blankets and let the sun get to them, and then cover them back up at night. And this can be kind of, labor intensive. Out at the garden, we're not at the garden every day, so we can't uncover them and cover them up every night. So we use the Agribon. It's a material that breathes a little bit, so it doesn't get too hot under the cover if it's on during the daytime. And it does get somewhat of the light penetration in it. And we put it on and we leave it on throughout the cold season to protect our plants. If your plants need a little more protection than just the covers, you can use Christmas lights, but you need to make sure you use the old-fashioned Christmas lights and the C9s or the C7s. Those ones get warm when they're turned on. They use more energy. Most of our Christmas lights are now the LEDs, and they do not put off any heat. So they're not going to help protect your plants during the cold weather. And what I do is I put it on a timer, and you kind of see approximately what time the really cold weather is going to start. And that's when you set your Christmas lights to come on, and then you turn it off in the morning. I do that under the covers, so I will do both things. So the cover will hold the heat in that the Christmas lights generate. So that does give you a few more degrees of protection on plants that are quite frost sensitive.
Well, and I was going to add, too, the Agribon that Helen was talking about, the Agribon 70 that we use out in our garden, will provide up to 10 degrees of frost protection. So if you're in an area that gets very, very cold, that 10 degrees can make a big difference. It can be super helpful.
The other thing I do with frost-sensitive plants is if you forgot to cover it and you're coming out at this time of year and you see all this frost damage on the plant, do not prune your plants. You don't want to prune them until we're really out of the frost season and the warmer weather is starting and we're starting to see the spring growth come out. And that's when you can prune your plants. Even though they look kind of ugly at this time of year, all that dead material is actually providing a frost barrier of its own. It's already killed the outer growth, but that's helping to protect the inner growth. And if you cut out all that dead, ugly stuff, you're only exposing the underneath growth to the frost if we have it again, and you're going to cause more damage. So it's best to just, once again, hibernate for the winter a little bit on some of the chores and wait till the spring.
I had one other thing I was just going to add, kind of going back to the issue of your plants being waterlogged. And the very best time to help your plants get through a heavy rainy season is before you plant them. And I'll just mention this now because everybody will be planting again coming up soon, and so you want to think about this, especially if in areas with our heavy clay, and if there are low-lying areas in your yard that tend to collect water more than others, you really want to make sure that the soil is amended, that you're providing a lot of drainage for your soil, and the way you do that is with compost. And you can use any organic compost. You're going to mix that into the soil. Once the soil has dried out enough and it's workable, you can start mixing the compost. And what that means, though, is that you need to add compost each year to really provide some nice drainage. A couple of other options there are you can add some of the red rock, like the pumice rock. If you take some of that and you mix that's a little bit more permanent drainage solution, well, that works really nicely with succulents. In fact, if you go out to Ruth Bancroft Garden, you'll see that that's how they amend their soil as one of the steps, and when they're creating new garden beds for succulents, is some of that red rock to really make sure that the roots and the air and water have lots of places to go. Another option is considering planting up on mounds. If you come out to our garden and look at our fruit trees, we planted our fruit trees up on mounds so that we knew the roots were not going to drown in heavy rain, and we mounded up native soil around them rather than bringing in imported soil. We really wanted the roots to be able to grow into our native soil, and they have done incredibly well. So they're mounded up, I don't know, probably, what did you say, 2 feet or so?
Well, what we did is we put the roots directly on the top of the ground, and then we pulled native soil around, and we mounded as high as we needed to go to cover up the root structure. And then on top of that, we put on our compost, because we compost everything around the garden and in the orchard. We put a pretty good thick layer of wood chips all around the orchard area.
And you can do that mounding method with many other things besides fruit trees. So shrubs, even perennials, that kind of thing.
That sounds better than digging a hole anyway.
Doesn't it?
But you had to dig the native soil to cover it too,
wow,
so you're
that's
still
good.
digging.
Can't get away from that.
Yeah.
So it looks like we're in for a long wet spell.
It does.
It could be a dry spell, so I'm
Yep,
happy for the
we're
wet
happy.
spell.
Yeah, we're happy even though it causes issues. But anyway, Janet and Helen are both integral parts of our garden, which is our joint demonstration garden that the Bay Area News Group started with the Contra Costa Master Gardeners, and the Master Gardeners have really taken off with it. And for those of you who don't know, we offer classes there from April through October, so we're coming up pretty soon on the new season. So what kind of special things can we expect this year?
Oh, it's pretty exciting, actually. We have some really new, neat things coming up. First of all, we'll kick off the season on April 2nd with our Great Tomato Plant Sale. We'll have over 16,000 plants, and we've got about 80 varieties of tomatoes and 30 varieties of eggplant or peppers and 20 varieties of eggplant. And we'll have all kinds of stuff there. That's a really fun day. We'll follow up with that second Saturday after that. And then after that April 2nd plant sale is our first class for the season at our garden, and that happens every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and the first class is going to be on growing tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, and then it goes from there. So we have, I think, 36 classes lined up for the season this year. And then in addition to our regular Wednesday classes, we have some really great Saturday workshops scheduled. So you're going to want to look for the calendar for that. But we've got Saturday workshops that are going to be a little bit more, we'll have multiple speakers, we'll have some hands-on opportunities, we'll have demonstrations, that kind of thing. So the calendar will be published here very soon, and you can always go to Google Contra Costa Master Gardeners and you'll find us there, or Joan has the calendar posted.
Up at mercurynews.com. We'll have that as soon as we get it. So it's really a lot of fun, and if you're in the area, you should come out. We're in Walnut Creek at the kind of the intersection of Shadelands and Wiggett, and we have a great time, and we hope you'll join us. And so until next time, maybe we'll be out at the garden, not slogging in the mud next time. We'll see you then. Bye.